Hello, and thanks for your interest in learning more about the wildlife exemption in Texas. This video will cover the basics of using wildlife management to maintain a wildlife tax exemption on your land. The process is straightforward, but not all that simple. It seems nothing that involves tax is ever easy. In 1995, Texas voters approved Proposition 11, which amended the Texas Constitution to permit agricultural appraisal for land used to manage wildlife. House Bill 1358 implemented the amendment by making wildlife management an agricultural use that qualifies the land for agricultural appraisal. With this, the wildlife exemption in Texas was born. To apply for property tax appraisal of open space lands as authorized by Section 1D1 of the Texas Constitution, a landowner must file a 1D1 open space appraisal application with the local county appraisal district. Only properties that are currently being appraised as agricultural lands, timberlands, or land currently used for wildlife exemption may apply for appraisal based on wildlife management. Additionally, landowners wishing to apply for wildlife exemption and wildlife management appraisal must include a wildlife management plan with their application. The management plan must detail the native wildlife targeted for management and outline at least 3 qualifying management practices that will be implemented on the property annually. The Texas Comptroller published a document titled Manual for the Appraisal of Agricultural Land. It discusses in detail the qualification of land for agricultural appraisal. It covers everything I'm going to tell you in this video. Okay, so let's overview the requirements for a wildlife exemption in Texas. Agricultural land used for wildlife management is often referred to as land maintained under a wildlife exemption. Some also refer to it as a wildlife tax valuation or wildlife use appraisal. Although these terms are used interchangeably, wildlife use does not actually exempt landowners from property tax. A wildlife exemption does maintain the low tax rate. There are specific requirements to convert land to wildlife management use or wildlife tax valuation. First, land must have a current timber or agricultural tax valuation. This is land that is currently devoted to agricultural use. Second, the land must have been qualified and appraised as agricultural land during the year before the year the owner changes to the wildlife management use. For example, a landowner who wants to qualify for wildlife exemption in 2024 must show the land was appraised as agricultural land in tax year 2023. Third, land with a wildlife exemption must be managed to propagate a sustaining breeding, migrating, or wintering population of native wild animals. Native wildlife includes all native vertebrates and all native invertebrates. For those needing a quick science reminder, invertebrates are bugs. Wildlife such as bluebirds, cottontail rabbits, white-tailed deer, carpenter bees, and the monarch butterfly can be used to maintain a wildlife exemption on land. Landowners cannot maintain a wildlife exemption on land by managing for exotic wildlife. The tax code describes wildlife management as using land to propagate a sustaining breeding, migrating, or wintering population of native wild animals. Management must include carrying out at least 3 of 7 management practices on the land each year. These 7 management practices for wildlife exemption include habitat control, erosion control, predator control, providing supplemental water, providing supplemental food, providing shelters, and making census counts to determine populations. A landowner may carry out more than 3 practices but may not engage in less than 3 management practices. Let's discuss the 7 practices for wildlife exemption in more detail. Number 1, habitat control. An animal's habitat includes plants and the cover and shelter they provide. Habitat control is about using the land to create or promote an environment that is beneficial to wildlife. This practice includes activities such as brush management, range improvement, and the use of prescribed fire to enhance land and wildlife habitat. Number 2, erosion control. Erosion is the movement of soil by wind and water. Activities that limit or stop erosion for the benefit of wildlife is considered erosion control. Common management activities for wildlife exemption include building ponds and planting herbaceous grasses and wildflowers on slopes and next to creeks and rivers. Number 3, predator management. Any practice intended to reduce the predators can qualify. Predator control not necessary unless the number of predators is harmful to the wildlife targeted for enhancement, or the landowner is interested in controlling exotic species. Common activities are the control of non-native wildlife such as red imported fire ants and feral hogs. Number 4, providing supplemental water. Water exists in all environments at some level, but not every property has surface water. Supplemental water involves providing water above what is naturally found on the land. Activities for wildlife exemption include adding water troughs, installing rainwater harvesting systems, and the development of wetlands. Number 5. Providing supplemental food. Most natural environments have food. However, a landowner can supply supplemental food in many ways that enhance forage resources on the land. Management activities for wildlife exemption include adding suitable feeders, planting food plots, and overseeding pastures and rangeland with native seeds to grow foods for targeted wildlife. Number 6. Providing supplemental shelter. This practice is about developing and maintaining plants and artificial structures to provide additional shelter for wildlife. This can protect animals from the weather, provide nesting sites, and enhance screening cover. Activities for this practice are nesting boxes, roost houses, brush piles, and timed mowing of grasslands. Number 7. Census and wildlife surveys. Surveys are a way to estimate the number and composition of a specific wildlife population or group of wildlife in an area. Standard survey methods exist for most wildlife. Examples of activities for wildlife exemption include bird, deer, and pollinator surveys. This overview of the 7 practices should give you an idea of the many activities that can be used to manage wildlife and their habitat. Again, at least 3 of these management activities must take place on the land. The management plan must detail the management activities that will occur on the property each year. The management plan and an application for wildlife exemption must be filed with the county appraisal district at the time when the land is converted from agricultural use to a wildlife exemption. The activities and practices contained in the management plan must be consistent with those appropriate for the region in which the property is located. Activities must also meet or exceed requirements for the property's size and be suitable for the wildlife targeted for management. With over 95% of Texas land in private ownership, stewardship of wildlife resources ultimately lies with the landowners of Texas. This makes the wildlife exemption important for wildlife and wildlife habitat in Texas. We at wildlifeexemption.com understand that land managers have varying degrees of experience and understanding of land and wildlife management principles. Some folks are knowledgeable about wildlife habitat management and are comfortable with a DIY approach. Others need a helping hand and benefit from professional advice. Please contact us if you need assistance with the process of converting or managing your land for wildlife exemption. We'd appreciate the opportunity to assist you.